Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of The Vampire Diaries, as well as the latest episode of Van Helsing. Starting off with The Vampire Diaries, I'll just include this information just in case you might come across this and didn't know that. This is the final season of The Vampire Diaries. Which I was sad to find out, but at the very least, I'm like, at least they're making the decision ahead of time. Like I said, I always like the fact that a show's going into its final season rather than it being like, oh yeah, the show just wrapped this season and it's like, oh yeah, it got canceled. So this makes this season you just saw the final season. It's like, no, this is the end, and it was kind of, the decision was made that this is going to be the end, whether it's because of ratings, blah blah blah, whether it's a creator's choice, network choices, who cares. The decision was made nonetheless, but at least it gives them a chance to kind of finish things up. I will kind of right off the bat tell everyone once again, if you didn't know, this is from what I read like a month or two ago, but this season will be shorter than other seasons. I think normally seasons run about 22 episodes, I think. But this season, I think I read the number was like only 16, so it's going to be a little bit of a shorter season. Not like extremely short, but a lot shorter. So, first of all, I want to talk about like how very interesting, like right off the bat, and how good this episode was about how it kind of throwing you in and kind of explaining things a little bit more, picking up where it's been a couple months. Obviously, Stefan, Caroline, and Bonnie have been looking for Damon and Enzo. But we kind of see that, you know, there is meaning to the killings that they're doing. It's not like they're completely insane. It's like, oh, they've turned back into the bloodthirsty monsters, you know, the way they just like, oh, go around killing people for fun. That's not what this is. They are legitimately being mind controlled. To the point they are actually self-aware that they are mind-controlled too, but it's like they can't actually do anything about it, because even Enzo brings it up in his episode. He's like, oh, how much, you know, asking Damon's like, how much, you know, control do you have over yourself? And Damon was like, oh yeah, I flipped the switch, because Enzo himself is saying like, I got roughly about 2%, but Damon, he was saying like, nah, I've just completely flipped the switch, you know, turned off his humanity. He's like, kind of basically like, oh, it makes things easier for him. Kind of suggesting that Enzo kind of does the same. Because we end up finding out, like, this thing is basically collecting terrible people. Basically, this thing feeds on crappy human beings. It's like, if you've done some really terrible stuff, the evil in people's heart is kind of what this thing kind of feeds off. Or maybe you could look at it as maybe like the evil in their souls. But that's what all those different people, they're not necessarily killing innocent people. They're killing people who've done some bad things, you know, some more evil than others. The point is to get the most evil of people. Like the two particular people we got this episode, that they picked up at the beginning of the episode. The girl, her worst crime was the fact is that she, slept with her boyfriend's friend or something like 8 times. So it's like not that bad. But the other dude ended up stealing medicine from someone that had cancer, so it was like, okay, that's a little crappy. But like the darker the stuff is, yeah, they were crappy people to a certain, in that moral sense of the word, but they weren't just like pure evil. And it seems like that's what this thing feeds off of. So all the people they've killed are like evil people. It did seem like it doesn't necessarily want anything supernatural, because Damon, kind of being an asshole, kicked Enzo into it and it didn't do anything. Obviously it kind of grabbed on his head, kind of like a certain dominance, being like, yo, I'm still boss, I still run things here, because, you know, because Enzo's had enough of all this killing and stuff. He just wants to go back. And it's like, what does this thing want? What is it? Because they don't have any ideas. Like, what is this all about? Which we got an answer to that, but I will get to that later on. But it grabbed on him, kind of exerted dominance, and just kind of let him go. So it kind of seems like it's not interested in supernatural things, only humans, to my knowledge. Maybe whatever it is trying to pull from people when it eats them. I mean, I guess considering what vampires are, the fact is the rapid healing and whatnot, maybe that's not easy to like consume. Maybe they heal too fast for it to consume them. Maybe, or it's just because like, it can take it from humans, but it can't take it from supernaturals. I mean, that's what I'm chalking it up to. But it was interesting when we found, like, when we end up finding out, like, you know, because the thing is, you have a situation of Stefan kind of being the one that still has hope. Bonnie doesn't. Like, it's just, she's been let down too many times. Her heart's been broken. Like, she's gotten her hopes up and then had him, like, crash. But, Stefan, he's kind of hopeful, always hoping that always keeping in mind, like, oh, this next lead is going to be the one that gets us to Damon and Enzo. But she's kind of like, don't give me hope. He doesn't want her to give up because it's like she, more so than anyone, is kind of what helps push him forward. It's like, as long as she doesn't give up, he'll be able to keep going on. And she's like, I don't know if I can. Like, no, she said I can, but just, I don't think I could have hope, don't, hope hurts. It hurts to hope. So. Which I find it's very interesting because Bonnie starts off like that, but it's actually vice versa later on in the episode because Stefan had that conversation with Damon where Damon was kind of like, yo, like, stop trying to save me, brother. You can't save me from this. This is kind of the end all be all. That basically was like, oh yeah, there's that basically this thing is kind of quote unquote the devil, that basically he's going to hell, that for all the killing and all the blood that they've spilled over the 100 plus years, 150 plus years that they've been alive, that it's just they've got to pay the price for what they've done, and that they basically the time is coming, the devil's coming to collect its due, essentially. Kind of going on and on, kind of like almost like he's almost completely given up hope. Maybe it's part of like him cutting off his humanity or whatever, but he's just kind of like, there's no hope for me. It's like, oh, Stefan tries to, because there's always something to kind of pull him back. It's like, Stefan's offering to turn on his humanity. He's like, I don't want my humanity back on, because, it's Damon's way of dealing with it because it makes it easier. Enzo's kind of suffering through it because he refuses to kind of turn his humanity off. But I'll kind of get to that in a second. But for Damien, it's just kind of like, it's easier that way. And, Stefan's trying to use Elena as a way of doing, pulling him back in, because that typically works. But he's like, nah, sorry, Elena's just not good enough anymore, because it's like, me and Elena, we walk down two separate paths. And it's just kind of like, that's just, there's no hope, essentially. It's like, we thought of hell as kind of being stuck inside of a stone and having to relive the kind of terrible moments in our lives. But no, that's not hell. He's like, I'm talking about the fire and brimstone hell. So it's kind of like, wow, you've never heard Damon really talk like that. Like, Damon's had moments in his life where he regrets some of the stuff he does. A lot of times it's very reluctant to admit that he, like, regrets everything in his life. But for him, it's just, like, downright depressing hearing him talk. Just, like, he's given up. He's just like, you can't fight this. It's hopeless. And then even going as far as saying, like, I blame you for this, Stefan, because you made me into this monster. And it's like, wow. To hear him say something like that is... I mean, you see it kind of hit Stefan. I mean, because Stefan's like, it's not the first time he's told me that, but it's like, I don't know why it hurts this time. Because I guess on some level, Stefan makes it seem like he's like, it almost seems like Damon, like, there's, like, it makes it final. Like, the way Damon said it made it seem like there is no going back. That he can't save his brother, that just his brother's kind of cast him aside. That it's like... he, like I said, like I brought up earlier, him and Bonnie ended up switching. He's kind of losing hope. But the fact is, Bonnie's not willing to give, she's kind of got hope now because she realizes, like, Enzo has been giving them signs. The fact of the matter is, the girl, because before, none of the bodies were discovered and whatnot, because they made a good enough job to, like, well, they keep the bodies, as you can tell. But even the ones that weren't necessarily used for the thing, what they did seem to do was, dispose of them in a way, because that's why they've been having such a hard time tracking them down. But it turns out, like, because he still has a little bit of himself in there, Enzo left her a sign, left the body out in the open, and she was strangled with guitar string, and that instantly clicked to Bonnie, and it's like, Enzo was giving them a sign, like, Damon, isn't trying to fight this. It seems like on the outside he's not trying to fight it, but on the inside he is, because as we see, there's a part of him, like, still holding on to that little bit of Elena, like, if, in particular, that first memory when he first met Elena, and he's trying to hold on to that. He's like, I need your help. I can't, I don't know if I can keep fighting like this forever. So he's acting like his cold self, but it's like, no, he's still fighting on the inside. Just there's that little bit of him still there, trying to hold on. Because for Damon, another reason why he flipped his humanity switch was because the thing can get inside your mind easily. That's been established. And he's like, because Damon kind of sees through Enzo. He's like, the fact that you're supposed to dispose of that body. He's like, I don't know what to tell you. The fact is that they found us like that. I don't know how they did it, man. I got rid of the body like normal, and everything. Obviously, lying his ass off. But Damon's like, the fact of the matter is, you're kind of showing the fact is that you care. This thing can get inside of your head. It knows what you care about, meaning it could easily go after that. So the easiest thing to do is flip your switch, because if you don't care about anything, you don't have to worry about it going after anything you care about. So that explained it a little bit more, because it's like he's turning himself into the perfect little puppet, so that if he's disobedient in any way or seem like he's trying to fight this, it can go after someone that he cares about, Bonnie, or maybe even Elena, or Stefan, or just anyone important in his life. I mean, I'd go as far as even saying Caroline, and use them as a means of trying to sit him back in line. And, so that's, his main reason for turning off the switch. And I'm wondering, maybe that's the reason why, playing into that role is the reason why he said what he said to Stefan, because he doesn't want Stefan to be near this. He is trying to keep his brother at a distance, so was saying something he knew would hurt him. Or maybe he legitimately feels that way. I don't know. But we did kind of get we basically got an idea of what this thing is nearing the end of the episode. Apparently this thing may or may not be a siren, because it was also tied in with all the clues that Enzo was leaving behind, because basically it's tying in with like the time they spent together, because how she recognized the guitar string is because Enzo helped her learn how to play guitar. Plus, the fact is, the girl's body they found had had wax in her ear, and it kind of tied into a story that he was telling her about, a story about sirens. And it's like, this thing might be a siren. And we end up finding out that all these body parts, it's been like all these people it's been consuming, has been for the sole purpose of kind of regenerating itself. Because we've seen its hands, but that's about it. But when we see it at the end of the episode, it's got like pure, like silky smooth flesh. So maybe it's trying to restore itself. Whatever this thing is, it is very, very dangerous. It does make you wonder, like, would even an original be able to handle them? Because we faced someone else before in the past. I mean, can I say we? Like, I'm part of Jordan. That, what was that thing? It's been so long. That's why I wish I should have at some point went back and rewatched earlier season of Vampire Day. It's basically the guy who predates even the Michelson family. The dude that basically Stefan's a doppelganger of. He basically had the power to get inside of people's heads. And it's like, we kind of have that similar situation here, but it makes this thing that much more dangerous. But what I found very fascinating is the fact that it told Damon to tell Stefan to walk away, because it was like, I don't need you yet. So it's like, why did it do that? It's like, it would seem like it would make things easier if it had more people under its control, or maybe it can only control certain people at a certain amount of time, or maybe it's just, depending on, like, maybe it can only control quote unquote evil people who have like a very dark spot on their heart. But it's like, that can't be the answer either, because Stefan was a ripper. He's done some pretty bad stuff in his past too, but maybe he's more repentant than Damon. I don't know. Maybe maybe I am on the right stratosphere, I guess I could put it, as to why them particular. Maybe it's something inside of them that it draws. It feels like, oh, these are the best candidates, and why it wouldn't choose someone like Stefan. Or not, because it seemed like it'd make things a little easier if you had more people working with you, but maybe it just has limited control, because maybe at this point in time, it doesn't have its full power yet. The question is, like, how did it end up in a situation, ended up locked up behind that vault and everything? What is it after? I mean, obviously, we see that it's kind of gotten its body back, but it's like, beyond that, what does it want? Because we ended up finding Alaric, kind of working with students. He's basically checking out the armory. I mean, because basically there's no one else there to kind of work on it and everything, because pretty much everyone that was part of the armory is dead. But essentially he's there with, I guess, students and interns kind of studying the place. He's making it seem like kind of like, oh yeah, this is just kind of a archaeology type of thing. It's nothing, because even one of his students is like, oh yeah, what kind of supernatural thing was locked up behind here? He's like, it's not like that. We had, in particular, the character's name is Georgie, but it's the actress, I know I'm about to butcher her name, Alison Scagliotti. I know I butchered her name so badly. Claudia from Warehouse 13. I kind of I was like, because I recognized her name immediately when I saw it. I was like, when they're listing all the people, and I was like, Allison, that's so cool. So that was interesting. They ended up finding out back way out of the vault is basically an invisible wall. Basically, you have to take away your other senses, your senses of sight and hearing, so that you can, like, more of a kind of like your feel of touch will kind of notice it's kind of an illusionary wall. Basically, there's a whole bunch of treasure back there. I guess that kind of ties in with the fact is that this thing is a siren, crashing a lot of ships, watching sailors die type of thing. I mean, because Alara kind of explains that the fact is that sirens kind of come from different forms. All mythology comes from somewhere based on something. So, obviously these are different. There are different interpretations about sirens. So it's like maybe some of them are true, maybe none of them are true. I guess we just have kind of like the whole vampire thing about how some things are kind of like, oh yeah, crosses work on vampires. Other things are like, no, that's just a stupid thing you see in Hollywood movies. Which I liked at the beginning of the two couple at the beginning were having that fight about just like, she's bringing up superhero movies, like, oh, the memory all these characters, their names, their costumes and stuff like that. And then the boyfriend joke brings up kind of like the joke to being like, oh yeah, I'm so glad that the whole vampire thing is over. I was like, nice. And then immediately Damon shows up in the middle of the room. Which I guess you can, like, it's an inside joke, I guess, on multiple levels. I mean, obviously because it's just kind of like people are kind of over the vampire thing, which I'm not. I will always like the vampire, werewolf, everything, just because I like supernatural as a genre. I'm stupid. But also, I guess you could also say it's kind of a slight knock because, like, the show is ending, so. But the fact is, you have that student, Allison, Georgie kind of was hitting on a lark a little bit, and I don't know. Like, I'm suspicious of everyone. It's because the usual thing is like they got such a specific actress, so it makes me think this is going to be more than that. Like, her character is more than just kind of like an intern. There's something more to this than that. I don't know. Maybe it's just maybe I'm just paying too much attention to that, but it just seems like a little too like on the nose. I feel like she's like, oh, I guess I just had to give it a try, kind of like, oh, you're so like kind of sexy when you get all geekish like that about everything. Because the fact of the matter is, they found that place with all that stuff, and it's like, oh, the fact is, none of this is corroded. It all looks like it's in pretty good condition. So it shouldn't be like this. The fact is, it's been underground like this, and it's just not messed with. It's still in decent, pristine condition. And it was telling her not to touch anything, which in the back of my mind, I'm like, she's going to touch something the moment you leave. But I mean, it never came up. But I mean, there's always next episode. But what I find very most fascinating is the fact is the Virginia situation. Like, for instance, when Caroline was trying to rewatch the tape, she ended up, like, trying to hear the conversation between Enzo and Virginia, trying to understand what the thing was. I mean, this is before they found out. And every time, like, it was getting to that part of the conversation, the audio would kind of screw up, and it's like, whoa, what the hell was that? And then, Virginia shows up, slits the babysitter, the nanny's throat, tries to kill Caroline's children. Luckily, Caroline showed up in time. It seems like I wasn't sure what that was about, whether that was because it's like, oh yeah, like she was trying, I thought I was like, okay, is she trying to kill them because she's under that thing's control? It's like, no, she was trying to kill them because they're important to this thing. For what reason? I don't know. I mean, because Caroline's babies are special in regard. I mean, they are children from the Gemini family that were born inside of they were born and conceived from a vampire. So it's kind of like, I don't know. I mean, not really born inside of Caroline. They were in Joe first, and then they went into Caroline. But you get my point. So they are something special. So, I mean, it makes you wonder how much of Caroline influenced them. Obviously, we know they have their magic powers and stuff like that, because it's like they ended up siphoning some of Caroline's like vampiric powers while they were inside of her, and that's still something that Caroline has to deal with even at this point in their lives. I mean, it's kind of like, I guess it's a little more under control, but it's like if they probably lose their temper or something, it comes out a little bit more. But nevertheless, Virginia, for whatever reason, rather than talking, bit off her own tongue and died. So it's like there's literally no one left to give them answers. It's kind of like, but the thing is, why? it's just like, I told you guys not to open that vault and let that thing out, but you did. And I was like, because I was thinking like, okay, maybe she's going after them because she thinks that thing has control of them or something. And then I started like, no, maybe it has control of her. But now it's like, no, it's just purely because I don't know. I mean, it's literally the first episode. You're not supposed to have the big picture in the first episode, but they gave you a good enough chunk of it, kind of get your brain working about certain things. And it does bring up the question of like, what happened to everybody else? I mean, we really don't know where Valerie stands. I mean, last time we saw her, she was kind of leaving off to kind of go search the world. So maybe we'll be seeing her. What about Matt after the whole Penny situation, finding out the truth, blaming Stefan and everything, like, and also where's, Tyler? Just, there's so many questions as to like where everyone is now. I think the last time you saw Tyler was in one of the flash forwards last season, where it was basically he was carrying Elena away. So I don't know. Like, it's very fascinating. Like, I'm very intrigued in this season. Like, they've already got me gripped. Like I said, I'm super sad to hear that the show is coming to an end, but it is one of those. I mean, hey, it's had a long run, and I consider myself fortunate that I've been able to watch this show since it first started airing. Granted, I don't remember the earlier seasons to save my life because I forget stuff just so easily. But it's one of the few shows I can honestly say I've been watching since it first aired. But yeah, so this show does have a special place in my heart because it's just kind of like it's one of those young adult series, because I know it is based on a series of books. It's probably I'm not about to say what I'm about to say. It's not worth getting to. But just I'm very intrigued by the season. Maybe get a look at where everyone stands. Like because I mean it was actually a very small scaled episode, if that makes any sense. Because it's like I said, because we're not focusing on any other characters, just everyone that's mainly involved in this whole situation. Like, Stefan, Caroline, Alaric, and Bonnie. But it's like, and then you have Damon and Enzo's situation. But it's like, it's just them. There's no, like, outside fluff is what I mean. Currently, the story is only focused on them. Because, usually there are other multiple storylines kind of playing at the same time. But it's like, nope, all the focus is on this one. But like I said, it's the first episode. So, obviously, I just get the feeling this is setting up to be something very, very good and something very, very big. So, and now moving on to the latest episode of Van Helsing, which we had a lot of interesting things go down this episode. For one, you had those two girls wandering around. It's like, oh, we found this door that said do not enter and stuff like that. Oh, they must be hiding food. And luckily there was that girl who was so short, the trap didn't go off and kill her. Then they pulled Axel out and started getting pissed at him. The girl's like, oh, she could have died and whatever. It's like, he literally said I was like, I put up signs to tell you to stay out. You're the ones that wandered off and were like, oh, I'm going to look at it. And she's like getting so pissed at him and everything. Even later on getting kind of a spear, a stick with a blade on it and just sliding it through the bars and slicing them up a little bit. It's like, are you serious? You're the ones that did that. You're kind of deflecting a little bit because that was your fault too. No one told you to wander around the base. It's like, oh, you're going to tell us how to disarm the traps and stuff like that. I get that. But at the same time, it's like, yo, I mean, you never asked if the place was booby trapped or not. Like I'm just a little like I'm a little offensive because it's like, yo, you locked up the team and everything. You're treating them like criminals. I get it. There's a killer amongst them and everything, So you have the right to be concerned. But I bring it up again. I will reiterate what I said last episode. Just fucking leave. Then I get it. Times are tough. It's like you rarely come across a place that you can bunker down in and be safe, especially a place that's got supplies and everything. But it's like, if you have such a problem with there being a killer there, then leave. You bring it up. The leader of the group even brings it up. It's like, the fact is you have a killer amongst you, and that still has not been answered. I get it. I know it's stupid. It makes no sense because it's like, yeah, that is a serious problem. But at the same time, it's like, but it's not your problem. It's like, you could have left them alone to do it. It's like, okay, there's a killer amongst you. You know what? We're getting the hell out of here. Leave. I'm sure Axel would have been like, okay, sure. Thanks for stopping by. At the very least, you could have asked for give us a small smidgen of what little portions of your supplies that we would have been using while we were here anyway. I'm sure Axel would have given him a middle finger, said, no, but still, Because the thing is that you came in here trying to take over the place. You're like, oh, you're trying to justify being like you're looking for the killer. It's like, even saying like, oh, things could have worked out. Which, dude, I don't know, man. It's like, part of me understands the group, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, nah, fuck them. They didn't have to stay. They could have left. But like I said, it's that situation where it's like, when there's safety, you kind of want to stick around. It's apocalypse and everything, vampires running around. It's like, if you're constantly moving around, it makes you an easier target. If you have a place that you can bunker down in, you're a little better off. But I was actually surprised when when the lights went out, Axel started kicking ass. Started off with a broken off broom, and that led to him killing a crap ton of people. It's like, dude was firing at him in the dark. He got underneath him and just killed a lot of your people, which in itself brought up many questions. Like, people like, yo, did we really have to? He's like, Axel's like, I had to kill him. It's like, did you really? No, you didn't have to. You wanted to. He's like, really? I did this for your asses. What are you talking about? They were going to kill us, which I want to say, I'm going to say that for a second, but it's like, you got to give Axel credit. It's like, what did you want him? What did you want him to do? I guess really the original thing would have been like, yo, knock them out and everything. But it's like, he's a soldier in a very particular situation, and I guess his soldier side just kind of kicked in, and he just like, it's like, no, I can't leave them alive. I guess it was more so than anything, it was kind of to send a message. I mean, really, if he wanted to, he probably could have killed every one of you. I mean, especially because he had the opportunity to kill the leader. And dude's like, no, it didn't have to turn out this way. And he's like, no, it didn't. He's like, I should have killed you when I had a chance. Like, yeah. Axel's like, yeah, you should have. You still going to have to give me the keys, and then knock him out. I mean, hell, he could have even, like, if he was that much of a monster, he would have killed the girl who tried to, like, stab, which I'm not advocating or anything like that. It just really sucks that she did what she did. It's like, you're at fault there too. It's their place. It's not their fault you didn't ask. So you don't have any booby traps around here, do you? I know it's not a type of question you ask, but still, it's like you happen. It's like getting pissed at someone because it's like, oh, you happen to be walking around their house and one of the floorboards to their house is loose, and you end up falling because it ends up breaking, and then you end up falling through, and you get pissed at it's like, oh, how dare you not tell us? It's like, well, there wasn't a hole there before. It wasn't an issue until you stepped right there. It's like, that room wasn't an issue until you stepped there, which does beg the question, what is behind that door that no one else asked? So maybe they already know. Maybe that stuff connected to Vanessa. Maybe that is where they keep some of their food and supplies. Nevertheless, I don't know. But I was actually kind of surprised that Vanessa helped him out and everything. It's one of those things. It's kind of like, a part of me is kind of like, because like when she was kind of like, oh, I'm just going to leave. I'll be Switzerland. I'll heal up and leave. I was like, huh. It's like, oh, are you going to stay or are you going to help out? It's like, oh, she is. I was like, huh, that's interesting. And then, because part of me is like, well, you don't necessarily owe them anything, but it's like, Vanessa's Vanessa. She cares about people. I mean, the whole reason why she helped that group in the first place is because she's kind of a good person. I guess I just showed you how much of a shitty person I am, because I brought that up last episode, being like, yo, if I was, Vanessa would have been better off just kind of like not bringing them along. I mean, she wouldn't have gotten kidnapped and everything. No, I brought that up the episode before last, I think, yeah. So it's, it just kind of shows you just how much of a shitty person I am. Sorry. But the thing I was going to bring up is the whole situation was based on the fact that Sam said, oh yeah, they're going to execute us, because they were asking, because he was reading lips and whatnot. Did it not cross anybody's mind that Sam might be lying? And the look on his face made me, like, after they were kicked out, made me think he was lying. It's like they just took his word for it. Like, you don't know for sure. Because the dude that led the group was kind of like, what are you talking about? We weren't going to kill you. And it was like, oh, you're a liar, I wish they could have been, because at first he's like, yo, Muhammad was a killer. It's like, you already know that Muhammad was a killer. You just kicked him out anyway, just because it's like to serve a point. But at the same time, it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe he was lying, but I'm starting to think Sam might have been lying. Now, whether that's because Sam was the killer the entire time and he just wanted to kind of stir some shit up, so he lied about that to kind of motivate them to kind of help get out of that jail cell situation, or that was payback from Muhammad for them kicking Muhammad out and kind of leaving him on his own, because that was someone that, Sam really cares about Muhammad. So maybe that's the case. Either way, I mean, we'll probably find out next episode, but it's like, I can't believe no one thought that. It's like, I immediately started thinking, I was like, what, how, you going to trust him for that? I was like, I get it. Like, especially Axel out of anyone, especially because they're like, okay, we need to turn off the lights, and Axel's like, okay, I'll handle it by himself. It's like, you can't do it because shutting off the lights would involve going to two opposite sides of the hospital, and it's like, you got to trust someone. And it's like, the way he was acting is like, he didn't trust anyone in that cell, so it's kind of like, okay, so why are you so quick to trust? Just because he's a deaf dude doesn't mean anything, And like I said, I just don't know what Sam's deal is. Like, I'm very suspicious of him. I kind of want to give him the benefit of the doubt. Part of me thinks more so than anything else the whole Muhammad situation, why he would lie like that. Like I said, who knows? Maybe the group leader dude was lying too. Like, no one else denied it, only he did. But maybe it was just kind of like, hey, there's no point. They're not going to believe us. So, it is kind of sad that little girl kind of left with them because Vanessa wanted her to stay. But, it was most likely kind of like a substitution. It was just kind of like Vanessa needed someone to protect because it's like, having her there was kind of like almost like in a way kind of protecting her own little girl. So, but the fact is that she left, it kind of broke Vanessa a little bit because Vanessa's kind of at the point where she's kind of like, nothing matters anymore. So. That's not a good sign. Maybe we'll kind of lose the kind-hearted Vanessa that we've kind of come to know so far. It's just kind of, I guess the little girl would rather be off with her group than be with them. Side note, during that whole situation, like inside, like they don't really give those things a real name. The only name they refer to them as is sewer beasts. Whatever those things were down in the sewers, they move super fast. I'm surprised Susan is still alive. I was really expecting them to kill Susan off, but I guess it seems like they're setting her up for something. We'll get to that in a second. But the fact of the matter is, the thing moves fast, got Vanessa, and then she just fucked one of those things up. And then afterwards, she was still kind of in rage mode, and she almost killed Susan, but Susan was able to kind of tap her out. But afterwards, she passed out. And then when she, finally gets back and everything, it's like Doc's talking about the fact is she's not healing, and it's like, yo, what's up with that? So, which brings up multiple questions. Was it just because of those things? Are those things poisonous or something? Is there a limit to how much Vanessa can heal? Is there obviously there's a lot more to Vanessa's whole situation than anyone knows because, they haven't really had a chance to really study her because they didn't really know what she was really 100% capable of. Obviously, the doc knew to a certain extent because it's like, Vanessa's body shows up all bloody and everything, wipe away the blood, there's no wounds. But it's like, since she's been awake, Doc hasn't really had an opportunity to, I think, really study her. So, I don't know, maybe it's the limits of her abilities, or maybe there's more to it than that. I don't know. And speaking of Doc, we had that thing at the end of the episode where she ended up cutting her finger and she's drinking the blood and she looks all kind of caught up in it, like ecstasy. So, once again, bringing it up, maybe there's a limit to how much Vanessa's blood can do for someone. Like maybe them revert back into a human is a temporary thing. I think I brought that up before. Or, bringing the fact is that vampiric impulse for blood, like the taste and lust for it, is still there too. Or that could be it too. So, which kind of means like Doc and Flesh aren't necessarily off the suspect. Like, I'm still very suspicious of them because I feel like out of anyone, they are the most suspicious. Especially because Susan was like, "Yo, I'm not going anywhere with him." It's like, oh yeah, don't worry. He's like, I know I got turned back into a human just like you. And it seemed like Susan was about to say something like, no, but Axel kind of cut off. It's like, no, he's fine. He's one of us. He's part of the group. I know it's kind of weird, but that was just the way Susan was acting. So I'm guessing Susan knew him as a vampire. Either he's a very bad dude or I don't know. Kind of going back to it, we kind of had that situation where, like, basically with that situation where the group was kind of deciding what to do with the other group. You had everyone being like, oh, so what do? We kicking them out? It's like, we can't do that. Assign their death warrants. It's like, you can't let them stay. After a situation like that, after they performed a coup, there's no way they can stay. Especially after the fact that Axel just killed a crap ton of their people. They definitely can't stay after that. Because it's like, yo, no, come on, just give us one more chance. It's like, no. Because them giving you one more chance most likely means you were going to slit their throats. I'm not saying you were bad people to begin with. You had your reasons for doing it. Like I said, your reasons are understandable. Were they justified? I don't know. Once again, I'll reiterate it. You could have just fucking left, but you didn't. Like I said, I've said my piece on that enough already, but nevertheless, it's like, so you weren't necessarily 100% bad people, but it's like, yo, I actually just killed a whole bunch of your people. The fact of the matter is that girl was already threatening to kill Axel earlier anyway, so it's going to be even more so after this. But it does bring up the question of, like, what were they actually whispering about? Like, I'm so suspicious of Sam, dude. I straight up think he was lying, dude. I think he manipulated a group and they're just not realizing it, so. But, kind of really quickly to that quote unquote resistance group of people that are trying to get inside that place. They follow that girl who I assume is Sheba, following her lead, and went in there, and the whole thing ended up being a trap. It's like, oh, you sold us out and everything, and then my theory ended up proving true. It was like the whole thing was a setup. She's like, and she sniffed her and said, "I told you, I remember your sin." I was like, oh, I knew that was it. And she's like, so I'm gonna use you to get the rest of the kind of resistance people. Apparently, there's a dude named Taka. I guess he's the one kind of leading the resistance. So, like I said, I guess they're kind of like a small like maybe they were kind of part of the resistance, but then they kind of got caught. Or maybe Taka's there at that particular place. Maybe he's just kind of keeping a low-key resistance. And there's, like, because, I don't know whether, like, Taka could be on the outside and, like, having connections with people on the inside with this whole, like, facility place where vampires keeping them like cattle. Or maybe he's there as part of the cattle too, but just no one really knows who he really is. Because, like I said, I think her name's Rebecca, didn't know if he was real until the guy kind of started blabbering in his mouth. It's like, oh, even if I knew anything, I wouldn't tell you. And it's like, by saying that, you're telling me that Taka does exist. Because it seemed like it was just kind of a little bit of a rumor, but now we know it's real. So poor Sheba, you kind of feel bad for her because it's like, yep, you got tricked into basically getting everyone, you were trying to help out, be helpful and whatnot, but you ended up kind of screwing everyone over. It's like that was an obvious trap. I was like, I knew it. Like, moment of walking, I was like, yeah, you're about to walk into a trap. Because even the dude that was kind of leading was kind of like, something ain't right here. But the lady kept wanting to go ahead anyway. I was like, dude, you guys are screwed. So it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. And we also saw a little bit about Muhammad, not too much. Saw him kind of going back to where I think him and Vanessa had saved that other group originally and kind of picking up some ammo and stuff like that. So it seems like he's okay. Part of me was expecting him to kind of cross paths with Sheba and them. Like, I don't know if that's going to be the case or not. I mean, that's also another question of what will they do? Now, like, will Muhammad come back, or will he continue on his own looking for his sister? Or will they go looking for him? I don't think they will, so. I mean, because I'm sure Axel's trying to get everything in order. I mean, they still have a killer to find. It's like, I don't know who it is. It could literally be anyone. The only person I'm not suspicious of is Axel. I mean, granted, we know it wasn't Vanessa and we know it wasn't Susan, so. I mean, I'm sure to everyone else's eyes. I mean, it'd be really effed up if you end up finding out it really was Axel the entire time. That would really suck. Like, it's like, dude, we were so on your side. It was like, obviously, you seem like you had main character status, and it turns out you're a bad guy. I mean, let's not forget, Ted kind of flipped the script on everyone, and it's like, but I mean, granted, we didn't really get to know Ted for that long. I mean, he was here in the full 3 years and everything, but we, as the audience, didn't really get to know him that well. But we've kind of come to know Axel a little bit, so. Axel did bring up the fact that it was like, I'm the one that killed him. They're like, oh, we killed people. We killed people, not monsters. It's sad. Like, you see that in a lot in like apocalypse situations. It's like, it's not always like the monsters you have to worry about. Like, The Walking Dead has taught me that. It's like, you don't have to just worry about monsters. People turn to monsters enough on their own. But it's like I said, it was a situation where it's just kind of like, did Axel have to necessarily kill them? No, he probably could have gone all stealth and knocked him out, but it's like, that wouldn't have done anything. That most likely would have gotten them killed, especially because Axel did it out of a goodness in his heart, because he legitimately was trying to save their lives, because it's like, oh, they're going to kill us if we don't, take them out first, essentially. So, I don't know. We're going to see, like, how the whole group feels now after it's all said and done. Like I said, see where everything goes next week, so. But that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.